As always, we like to thank our education sponsors for being so supportive of our entire digital education series. This evening speaker series is presented by West Pharmaceutical, but also big support and thanks to our supporting sponsors, which is Daiichi Sankyo, Merck, and GSK. Without them, we would not be able to bring all of these important and thoughtful discussions to you. So with that being said, I want to give a proper introduction to our guest speaker. So our topic for this evening we are discussing is mindfulness-based stress reduction. And I will bring onto the screen along with me, Gail, if you wouldn't mind also spotlighting Elise. So Elise Moss is the Associate Director of the Myrna Brind Center for Mindfulness at the Marcus Institute of Integrative Health at Jefferson here in Philadelphia. She received extensive training in teaching mindfulness at Jefferson's Mindfulness Institute. She's also attended professional training with the founder of the Stress Reduction Clinic at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. She is a senior mindfulness instructor and teaches mindfulness-based stress reduction to groups, individuals, healthcare professionals, medical students, and employees in corporate settings. In addition to teaching, she conducts qualitative research on the effects of mindfulness-based stress reduction on the physical and psychological effect and is published in many peer-reviewed journals. She's also a certified yoga teacher, so checks all of those boxes. So Elise, thank you so much for being here this evening. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Erin. And hello, everyone, and welcome. So I have a brief PowerPoint presentation, which I'll take you through, but I thought we could spend more time actually experiencing mindfulness. So I'll guide you in a practice, and there'll be plenty of time for question and answer. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint at this time. Okay. So this is an introduction to mindfulness-based stress reduction and to mindfulness itself. So we'll spend just a little bit of time just clarifying what mindfulness is. My sense is most of you or many of you have some idea of what mindfulness is because it has become much more popular. And I'll describe a little bit of the history of the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, what it looks like in practice, just very briefly touch upon some of the research and what it says about mindfulness-based stress reduction. And then, as I said, we'll have an experience of practice. So there's actually many ways we can talk about mindfulness. And, you know, if we had more time, I would ask you to pop up, you know, what's mindfulness? And I'm sure many of you would be able to suggest a lot of what you think mindfulness is. So here's one definition that comes from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who founded the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction program. It's not the only definition, so I want you to know that as well. But in this definition, Jon talks about how mindfulness is awareness. And that's really natural capacity that we all have to be aware. And it's this awareness that arises more fully through paying attention on purpose in the present moment with an attitude of non-judgment. So Jon is quite wordy, so we have to unpack this definition a little bit, right? So paying attention. I can only see some of you, but were you ever taught how to pay attention? Could I see a show of hands? I see heads shaking no. One person, maybe. So in general, unless we've had a really unique education, we're not really taught how to pay attention. We obviously figure it out. We're told pay attention, but we often don't realize that attention is a skill that we can develop, that we can strengthen. So that's one of the things we do with mindfulness training. We do it on purpose, intentionally, because if we are not intentional, nothing happens, right? So connecting with our intention is very helpful. what we pay attention to is the present moment, because that is truly the only moment that we have. It feels kind of radical to say that, but it's the truth. Now, that doesn't mean we don't plan and prepare for the future. Of course, we have to do that. Otherwise, we couldn't even gather here like this. But that planning and preparing has to happen in the present moment. But have you noticed sometimes the mind hops into the future as if it's actually happening? And often it's not the rosy colored future that we hop into, or we go into the past and we ruminate and go over again what had already happened. And our bodies don't actually know the difference between our anticipation of something that might happen, something we lived through, and our bodies respond as if it's happening in the moment. So learning to train our attention to be in the present is very, very useful. Now, there's another very important piece of this definition, and it's the how we pay attention. And that's where this attitude comes in, right? Have you noticed sometimes you might be quite present, but very critical of yourself, critical of what's happening, kind of the judgmental part of our mind is often quite active. So with mindfulness, we notice judgment. Oh, that's what it is. We don't have to judge the judging, but we're very good at doing that. But we start to cultivate more openness, more curiosity, rather than just reactively judging our experience. So these three aspects or axioms of mindfulness, attention, intention, attitude, we kind of cultivate them all the time. It's not like, okay, we got this piece, now we move on to this piece. And these attitudes I'll come back to again, because they are often the most transformative piece of mindfulness training. Another very simple way to think about mindfulness is being here and now with an attitude of curiosity and kindness. So I'm inviting you to notice where you are right now. Are you indeed present? Without judging yourself in any way, just notice what's happening. And if you're looking at the slide, you might see mind full. Often our minds are full of worries and the to-do list and what went wrong and what has to happen. And we miss out on what's actually happening. So again, this is not meant as a judgment, but just for us to see. Sometimes our mind is full of all kinds of worries, anticipation, the to-do list. But if we can be aware of even that without judging ourselves, it's actually much more helpful than when we're lost in it. So I had said I was going to come back to the attitudes of mindfulness, because we can't necessarily, not even necessarily, we can't really change what's happening to us, right? We start to see with mindfulness, we are maybe able to relate to it in a way. Oops, I'm not sure what's happening. Someone else is sharing a screen. Erin, do you see that too? Okay.
Yep,
so
I will. There we go. Perfect.
That's all right. So this is perfect, actually, right? What do we do when our attention gets pulled away? This is where our practice comes in. Oh, I could have just sat there fretting about it, what's happening. Or I mean, here it was a pretty simple thing to do. Just say, looks like someone else is sharing the screen. And Erin was able to change that. Sometimes we're able to change, and that's wonderful, right? Sometimes we're not able to change the circumstances. In that case, learning how to relate to the circumstances or to what's happening in a more skillful way can be very helpful. So these attitudes of non-judgment, patience. Any of you impatient? Could I see a yes? I see some heads nodding and show of hands, right? This is how we're conditioned. We're conditioned to be quite judging, especially of ourselves. We're conditioned to want to get things done more and to strive and control our experience. So with mindfulness training, we start to become, remember, it's awareness. We start to become more aware of our own patterns and to see, do these patterns actually serve our well-being? Do they support us? And if not, we also start to see, oh, I don't have to continue in this conditioned way that I've maybe spent 3, 4, 5 decades, 6 decades of my life. We start to see there's possibilities and other ways of relating to experience. So I want to talk just a little bit about the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction program. So mindfulness is awareness. And as awareness, it's our natural capacity. We've always had it. We're often disconnected from it, but it's always there within us. Mindfulness practices are ways to train our minds so that we can be more connected with this natural awareness. And mindfulness practices are pretty ancient. They come from lots of different traditions. The one that the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction program came out of is a more explicitly Buddhist tradition of mindfulness training. So Jon Kabat-Zinn did not create mindfulness or mindfulness practices, but what he did create was this program where he took these ancient practices and incorporated it and created a kind of secular curriculum that involves training our minds using these ancient formal meditations, but also educational information on stress and stress physiology, right? Practices designed to help us see our patterns, designed to help us learn to pause and respond more consciously. And the book that he wrote about it, he called The Full Catastrophe Living, using the wisdom of your body and mind to face stress, pain, and illness. And so this was created in 1979, and it's been continuously offered. And so that's what? Somewhere between 40 and 45 years. My math isn't that good to tell you the exact number of years that it's been offered, but 4 decades of teaching this program. And the design is pretty consistent, this model, that we meet once a week for 2.5 hours. Plus there's a full day of practice or retreat. And it's really designed for originally for heterogeneous patient populations, because he was bringing it into a healthcare setting. And the emphasis is more educational. It's not group therapy, but it is a group program. And there is a community of learning and practice, and we're learning new skills. And it also involves practicing every day in between the weekly classes. So this design has been consistently offered for over 4 decades. And in the 8-week program, a variety of what are called formal practices, sometimes we call them meditations, mindfulness meditation, are taught. And there's something called a body scan meditation. I know I've worked with cancer patients who don't like that name, the scan. So we call it a body awareness practice. And here it's not that we're scanning to see what might be wrong. Here it's just that we're moving attention through the body to actually feel into the body without judgment, without expectation, without needing it to be any particular way, but to become actually more embodied. There's also other meditations where maybe we just follow the breath or open to sound. And finally, we open to everything, whatever's arising, thoughts, emotions, without pushing anything away, without identifying with anything. So there's a range of practices that we learn over the course of 8 weeks. There's also mindful movement practices, mindful yoga, a practice called Qigong, where we cultivate the flow of energy, Qi. Mindful walking practice, which can both be a formal practice where you just set a path and you're just going to walk as a meditation. But the beautiful thing about mindful walking is that it can also be informal practice, part of mindfulness in daily life, because we're not meditating just for the sake of meditating. We're meditating, at least in this context, to become more awake to our life, to bring more balance into all aspects of our life. So the informal practices are also emphasized a lot. So the informal practices could be anything you're doing. Mindful walking, that picture, mindful of worries, or just mindfully walking and seeing what you're seeing when you're walking. It could be mindfully doing your dishes, mindful bed making, laundry folding, you name it. So any practice can be a mindfulness practice. We also do practices where we cultivate particular qualities, kindness, compassion, love, that are inherent within each of us and embedded in this awareness, but there's practices that more explicitly cultivate these qualities that support us. So I'm going to go a little bit quicker now just to say that we've been teaching this program at Jefferson since 1996. And in addition to teaching public programs, we also teach the medical students here. We're also a large university hospital. So I teach medical students, we teach residents, and we go into various settings to teach mindfulness. We used to have I'll tell you a little personal story how I came into this. This was in 2006. The Marcus Institute of Integrative Medicine, that's the current name. At large institutions, names can change, but they had a 5-year NIH-funded research grant to look at a mindfulness intervention for cancer patients. So I came initially part-time as a qualitative researcher to look at the effects of this program for cancer patients. And then I took the course myself and I started to train to teach it. So this kind of combination of research and teaching, I think we're so fortunate to be in that kind of a setting. So I think I've said this already, that it's been offered for more than 40 years. And the one thing I will say is that it's gone beyond mindfulness-based stress reduction as a program. That was the foundational program, but there are now a variety of other programs taking that as the basis, such as mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. Sometimes people have taught a program, I don't know if it's currently being taught, mindfulness-based cancer recovery. The program we had that we're not really teaching so much is mindfulness-based art therapy that combine mindfulness-based stress reduction with some art making component. There's mindfulness-based childbirth and parenting and lots of other interventions. So it's gone well beyond healthcare settings into a lot of other settings. Sounded like someone was shouting dinner, but maybe that was something else. So notice where your attention is now. Right? And that's what happens. And I've been talking at you for a while, so it's natural that your attention may get pulled into the future, what you're having for dinner, or maybe into the past, or you're just lost in thought. And this is just what our minds do. And it's a lovely opportunity to notice that. So just a few more slides, I promise, and then we'll actually do practice. So this is just to show you how much research on mindfulness has grown. And most of the research on mindfulness is on mindfulness-based stress reduction. And a lot of this research is published in peer-reviewed journals with various kinds of populations, what are clinical populations as well as non-clinical populations. And what the research actually shows. The potential benefits of mindfulness training, significant reductions in anxiety. Even like 10 years ago, we used to joke that if any pharmaceutical drug had this kind of effect, it would be on the cover of Time magazine. And obviously that doesn't apply anymore because mindfulness now is on the cover of lots of magazines. So research also shows it can help improve mood, enhance the health-related quality of life, so sleep, vitality, those kinds of measures, again, in various populations, including cancer populations, improvements in chronic pain management. And this one's interesting. So with mindfulness meditations, we're training our minds, right? But researchers have found that when we do that, there's a physiological effect on the body that scientists can measure. And one of those effects is improved immune functioning. And that mind-body connection is so strong, right, that we can use it to support well-being, support enhancing immune functioning. And there has been some research specifically with cancer patients looking at how mindfulness can support immune functioning. Also research on its potential to improve cognitive functioning and brain functioning, changes in brain structure. And I'll say that most of this research is still in its infancy, right? Just a few decades worth of research. So it's promising, but we can't say definitively, yes, mindfulness is good for everyone and it will lead to all of these amazing benefits. This is a good picture to look at. One figure saying to the other, what is that? And there's all this stuff. And that person says, oh, just my mind. So maybe you could just examine what's happening in your mind. Maybe it's relatively quiet, or maybe you're noticing all of this happening. And the key is to not judge, but to just be aware and see what happens when you're simply aware of what's happening. So before I actually move into guiding a practice, I want to ask, are there any questions? So we'll do questions now, and then we'll do questions after the practice. But any questions about what mindfulness is or is not? And you can put it in the chat, or I think someone unmuted. Barbara, did you have a question?
Yeah, can we get a copy of all your slides?
Erin, can...
Yeah, absolutely. We can share that on the library with this recording.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that was a fairly easy question. Any other questions? Okay.
Oh, Sandra had a question. Have there been published results from the study you started with?
Did I start? Oh, the study that I started my Jefferson tenure with? Yes, there have, and I can send the reference to Erin. Can I send you the reference? And
Perfect.
Or Gail, yeah, and they can put that up there. Yeah, and that intervention was called Mindfulness-Based Art Therapy, and it did have an active control, which was, I think, an educational group. And the interesting thing is they found both groups were actually helpful, because there is so much benefit in just coming together and being with others, no matter what's happening. So I'll send that link, and I will say, since we are talking about it, that was specifically for cancer patients. The mindfulness-based stress reduction program that we currently teach is a mixed group of people. We've had lots of cancer patients come through, and we have always a mix of people coming for chronic pain, anxiety, professionals who are coming for more balance, for stress. So I find it really fascinating what happens in those 8 weeks that we don't know a lot about each other. We may not know why someone's coming, what that person is dealing with, but there is a very deep connection that it's just like a shared human connection. So I love that about teaching the program and being part of the program. So unless there are any other specific questions, there'll be more time for questions after. I would like to guide you in a practice so that you get a taste of mindfulness, okay? And I will say, with mindfulness, again, remind you, it's an awareness practice. So you don't have to feel any particular way, okay? Sometimes people have a misconception that to practice, I need to be peaceful, I need to be calm. And actually, all you need is a willingness to pay attention. You will notice while I'm guiding the meditation, your attention wanders off many times. Are you going to judge yourself for that? Hopefully not. But you might notice, even though I'm saying, this is natural, normal, you don't have to judge yourself, you might notice that you're giving yourself a hard time. And that would be good to see. Because as much as this is about training our attention, it is also about learning about ourselves and our patterns, like I said. If we don't see our patterns, we don't have any choices. But if we can start to see our patterns, then we start to have some choice, okay? So coming into a comfortable posture for this period of practice, you can practice mindfulness in any posture. It is helpful to be as much at ease as possible. So if you're sitting, maybe sitting back a little. If you're lying down, you can certainly choose to lie down if that's available to you. lying down comfortably. And then just invite attention into the body, knowing you're in the posture you're in, because you can actually sense that. And as you do that, you might notice the body's calling for you to adjust your posture in some way. In which case, please do so. So this is an act of self-care, to first take time to even notice, how does it feel in the body? So often we hold ourselves up in postures that generate so much tension without even realizing we're doing that. So as you feel into the body, maybe just noticing, adjusting, and as I guide the meditation, if you need to move again during the practice, please do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And you can practice with your eyes open if that's more comfortable for you, or if you need to keep your eyes open to see the interpreter. You can also practice with your eyes gently closed if that feels more comfortable. One isn't better than the other. It's just to see for yourself what actually supports you to be present. And as I'm guiding the practice, you start to notice you're falling asleep and you have your eyes closed. You could simply open your eyes, or perhaps shift your posture, or you could also take a little nap. I have some bells that I will ring at the end. So again, this is not about right or wrong, but more about consciously choosing that intention piece. So just keep it inviting attention more and more fully into the body, just feeling the contact that the body is making with the support beneath you. Perhaps the feeling of the feet on the ground if they're on the ground. Maybe the backs of the thighs, buttocks on the chair if you're sitting on a chair, or your body on the bed if you happen to be lying on the bed. So whatever the body's making contact with, allow yourself to really feel that. Maybe you didn't notice it until I asked you to bring your attention there. But as soon as you bring your attention there, it's possible to notice that there is a physical support beneath you right now. And when you notice that, maybe you could allow yourself to be supported just a bit more, so that you don't have to work quite so hard in this moment to hold yourself up. And maybe we could take a few relaxing breaths together. We call them relaxing sighs. You know how you sigh? So just breathing in naturally through the nose, out through the mouth with a gentle sigh. And you're muted, so feel free to make some sound if it feels good. Maybe just one more. And then releasing that effort, letting the breath just find its own natural rhythm. With mindfulness, there is no right or wrong way for you to feel, no right or wrong way for you to breathe. And just keep inviting attention to come more and more fully into the sense of the body, perhaps feeling the body breathing, which it has been doing this whole time. Maybe you sense the breath in the region of the nostrils, the feeling of air coming in and out. Or perhaps you can feel the breath a little bit more in the movement of the chest, even if it's a very slight movement. Or maybe right now You're more in touch with the rising and falling of the belly with each cycle of breathing. Or it may even be a sense of the whole body breathing. Doesn't really matter where, but wherever you can feel the breath most easily. Just a light touch of attention resting right there. Just feeling the breath coming and going. And allowing the sensations of breathing to be just as they are. So maybe very subtle, maybe deep, maybe slow or fast. And this idea of allowing attention to rest. And the breath, the feeling of the breath is providing attention something to rest with. But if bringing attention to the breath feels difficult for you, you can rest your attention somewhere else, a neutral place in the body, perhaps the feeling of the hands where they're resting, or just a sense of the whole body. So ultimately, it's not so much what you're paying attention to, but the qualities of attention that we cultivate with mindfulness practice. That it's present moment, that it's not judging, it's gentle, curious, and kind. And you'll notice, I'm sure you've probably already noticed, attention gets carried away, gets caught up in thinking, in judgment, in worry, in the to-do list, or just lost in some fantasy. And this is not a problem, even if it happens again and again. Whenever you notice that, you're just noticing the nature of mind. It's not personal to any one of us, just what our minds do. And when you notice that attention was somewhere else, in that moment of noticing, you are actually present. Otherwise, you wouldn't have noticed. And with that presence, with that awareness, comes your ability to choose. And you can choose for now to just let attention come to rest again with this feeling of the breath happening in the moment. This very in-breath or out-breath that's already unfolding. Or if you're placing your attention somewhere else, just you replace your attention right there. So as many times as attention disconnects and you notice, without struggling with that, without giving yourself a hard time, with kindness, care, you just gently bring attention back to this moment through the feeling of the breath or sensations in the body. You reconnect and rest. So the touch of attention is very light, with just the feeling of the breath or a sensation somewhere in the body, kind of like a home base for attention. And you don't have to try to get rid of anything else. Other body sensations, sounds, thoughts, emotions. You can allow all of that to come and go. For now, everything else a little more in the periphery. And this feeling of breathing or sensation somewhere in the body, what's more at the center. And resting deeply just as you are. That means allowing the mind to be just as it is, allowing emotions to be just as they are. For now, really just giving yourself permission to be as you are and to rest in this awareness of being just for a few moments more. Letting go of having to do anything, having to fix, change, solve anything, just for these few moments. And to just be, to be here and now with as much openness and kindness as possible. And very gently expanding attention beyond the sensations of breathing or a specific region of the body to a sense of the whole body. Not so much our thoughts or worries or judgments about the body, but just this feeling of being in a body, this living human body. And expanding attention beyond the body to the sense of space around the body. Maybe the feeling of air against the skin or clothing. And just opening to listening. Could be just listening to silence. So we're just broadening attention. Or maybe if there's sounds, just receiving sounds. And I promised I would ring bells in case anyone's sleeping. So I'm going to ring the bells 3 times. And just receiving the sound of the bells or just resting in silence. Without any sense of rushing. Just take some time perhaps to bring a little movement into the body, stretching in any way the body may be calling for, being gentle, mindful. And if you were practicing with your eyes closed, if they're still closed, if you like, opening your eyes, opening to your environment first, just noticing that seeing is happening. And if it feels right, opening to our Zoom environment. And this is a time that we have to share and ask questions. But before we move into the questions, I'm inviting you to notice how you are in this moment, no matter what happened during the practice. And if you're willing to share in just a word or two, maybe share your first name. If you're willing to unmute yourself, just say your first name, word or two. What's here right now? How are you in this moment? I know I would love to hear. So I see in the chat, Cynthia wrote, I feel very relaxed. Roseanne, relaxed and refreshed. Wonderfully relaxed, said Barbara.
This is Teresa. I feel much better because it was a stressful day at work, and I was like really tense, but I feel a lot better now.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Teresa. Anyone else have a stressful day? I see some smiles and nods. So we often do have stressful days, and practice can be supportive. So I want to make sure. So someone said, much more relaxed. How often can we perform lymphatic massage? I want to make sure this question isn't answered. I'm not exactly sure of the question, but I do get the more relaxed piece. And in a sense, this is like a massage for our bodies with our minds. So let me just see if there's anything in the chat that's other than calm, peaceful, calm. Okay, feel much more calm. Okay. And someone wrote, it's been a long time since I felt this calm and relaxed, Sandra. So Pam, aware. I'm really glad you give that a voice, Pam, because ultimately that's the practice. So someone else wrote, Susan could not have come at a better time. Another surgery this past Monday feels so much better. Oh, thank you, Susan. Thank you for sharing that and for giving that a voice. And is there anyone, and more very present from Maureen, is there anyone feeling something other than relaxed, calm, peaceful? Anyone feeling anxious, agitated? Because this is all inclusive. And Susan, emotional, yeah. And we want to include all of it, right? And that's part of the practice. This practice, the beneficial side effects of this practice are that we feel calmer and more relaxed, right? We can feel more ease. But ultimately, what we're cultivating is that awareness, the presence, and our ability to be with whatever arises in the present moment. I think that's why Jon Kabat-Zinn called the book Full Catastrophe Living, right? Yes, it is very helpful when we can bring ourselves to more calm, more relaxation, and more peace and ease. But sometimes, no matter how much we practice, we can't. Then it's very powerful to be okay with, wow, I'm noticing a lot of emotion. I'm in pain and I'm aware of my pain, whether it's physical, emotional, and I can be with it. Diana wrote, when you had us tune into the sounds, I heard my pet's water fountain. LOL, so peaceful, right? There's so much that's happening around us that we're not aware of, right? Sometimes our mind gets so hyper-focused and we get this tunnel vision and we forget the life around us. Again, that picture, right? The person walking the dog, and could be just lost in thought, or we could be open to what's here. And my mind's being pulled in two directions. I'm like that person with two stories I want to share. And well, one's a practice, one's a story. The practice is that we can pause, right? We did a fairly long practice, but it doesn't have to be so long. The one thing research is not clear on is how much we actually need to practice in order to see the benefits. But we do know even brief periods of practice done regularly are very beneficial, and they build that momentum. So actually pausing throughout the day and just opening to sound. Oh, suddenly I hear the water fountain or my dogs or the birds outside, or I see something I hadn't seen. I see the sunlight. I see something in my house that I hadn't noticed, like a plant, right? So moments of mindfulness can be very supportive. And then the other story I wanted to share was the LOL. I won't go into the whole long story, but a mindfulness teacher who, this is a while ago, was just learning, to text. And his son had said LOL, and he started using LOL for everything. Some of you may know this story. And someone passed away, like a good friend, and he texted the good friend's wife a message and ended it with LOL. And his son said, and it was a group text or a group message, his son said, do you know what LOL means, Dad? And the dad goes, oh, lots of love. So that story has always stayed with me. So whenever I see LOL, my heart just opens. So maybe that'll be the takeaway for all of you. You'll remember the lots of love that we can bring into each moment. Let me just see if there's anything else in the chat. Oh, someone said this is the second mindfulness practice for today. Yay, you get extra points. First time today, my eyes felt not strained, right? So often we don't realize the strain we put on ourselves. Would you agree? Like, you're going to bed, everything's hurting, and because unknowingly we're holding ourselves in this position of tightness and tension. And our body does that thinking it's protecting us, right? It does it from a good intention, but unfortunately it doesn't work, and it just causes us more tightness, tension, more pain. So the awareness of it is so helpful. Oh, I'm aware I'm trying to focus so hard. Oh, I could soften a bit. Oh, I'm aware I'm like this. I could drop my shoulders a little. So Pam, someone said, thanks for pointing it out. Same for me. So that's the beauty of being in a group and the group sharing, because we start to see. Sometimes we don't notice it in ourselves until someone says it. Then it's like, oh yeah, I do that too. So a question, would tuning into your vagus nerve in different parts of your body be similar to mindfulness too? Then it's a really good question. I don't have enough information to answer, but I will say there's so many ways to tap into our body's wisdom and its capacity for healing, to tap into our ability to kind of down-regulate the stress response, promote more of the relaxation response. And, there's so much more coming out on the vagus nerve and how it controls so many functions of the body and how stimulating the vagus nerve can be beneficial. But I don't know enough about it. But it does go to show that there's so many different modalities. And mindfulness isn't necessarily the one for everyone at every point in their life. So that bears saying, right? Because it does require some courage, right? We don't always want to face what's happening, or depending on our makeup. All of you obviously are open enough to come to this session and interested enough, right? But I wouldn't go just preach mindfulness to everyone. So it's good that there's various modalities. Any questions?
Elise, I had a question. This is Erin speaking. For anyone that may be not feeling peaceful, not feeling relaxed, but feeling those anxious or other emotions, if they continued with a mindfulness practice, is that something that they could work through? Because I wouldn't want someone to be deterred if they weren't experiencing all of these things that everyone is sharing in the chat. Is that something that you might recommend someone continue to plug away at, or you will get there?
Great question. Thank you for bringing it up, Erin. So first of all, no matter what you're feeling, it's perfect. It may not feel perfect. We have preferences. We don't want to feel anxious. We want to feel relaxed. And sometimes people say, oh, I don't like mindfulness. It makes me more anxious, or I cannot do it because it makes me more anxious. And it's good to be discerning. Remember when we had the non-judgment? Non-judgment does not mean we give up our capacity for discernment. We want to be skillful, right? And say, well, I noticed I'm anxious, but if I can talk to someone about it and they can support me, and I keep trying practice, maybe I do it for 5 minutes, or maybe instead of bringing attention to the breath or body, I open to sound, and that's a better way. Or for me, it's being in nature and looking at the stream, right? So it's tricky because sometimes without that support, so there's mindfulness practices freely available. A lot of people are saying they teach mindfulness. And we tend to be quite cautious at Jefferson. We always go by the do no harm. And we have a whole process before people come into our program. We meet, we talk about what the program is, what's required, what to expect. And sometimes strong emotions can arise with these meditations. We wouldn't want anyone to get so triggered that they're knocked off balance, right? And in general, through the whole process, and we're meeting once a week and we can talk about it, I think then yes, right? We get to a point over time, people do feel less anxious. I wouldn't suggest someone who's noticing they're very anxious keep doing it by themselves without having the support of someone to talk it through. Does that answer your question in a very complicated way, Erin?
Absolutely. That was wonderful. I'm glad you pointed out leaning into not doing this alone, but finding someone that can guide them, that they can sort of work through that with. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. And as I said, there's lots of resources for practicing. Not everyone wants to do a whole 8-week program. It's pretty intensive. And it does require not only willingness to open to your own life, but hearing other people. It's not group therapy. It's not so much that people are talking about their stories.
No.
But we're opening to the human condition. It's not always easy. So making sure that it's the right fit, right time. But even if you didn't feel like the 8-week program was the pathway for you, there's a lot of recordings. Erin, is that possible? If I sent you a list of resources, is that somewhere that could go up?
Absolutely.
So one of the things we offer from Jefferson's Mindfulness Center is every Tuesday from 12:30 to 12:45. I or one of the other teachers guide a meditation. There's no teaching, there's no discussion. It's just a guided meditation, but there might be 50 to 60 people just joining, practicing together. I feel like it doesn't even matter what I guide. It's really people just coming together every week at the same time. So someone asked, would doing 2 things that are enjoyable at the same time be beneficial or harmful for stress? For example, listening to an audiobook while coloring. I suggest exploring and seeing for yourself. I know one of the things they say is that our brain doesn't actually multitask. It just switches back and forth between tasks. I notice when I'm listening and I'm doing anything else, I miss a lot of what I'm listening to. But we're all different, right? So maybe the coloring is so on autopilot, you're listening, but you're giving your hand something to do. So really can't encourage enough trying out, exploring, maybe being playful. And you're the expert when it comes to what supports you, right? Yes, the experts can talk about stress and stress physiology and different modalities, but see for yourself. Someone started a walking group in their town, Barbara, for breast cancer warriors, validates the importance of what we are doing. Thank you. Oh, how lovely, right? That is 2 benefits you can get at the same time: being with others, supporting each other, and walking. Sandy, a study that a naturopathic doctor cited that breast cancer survivors who did a 10-week mindfulness stress reduction program had a 50% increased disease-free survival over the control group who did not do the program. That's pretty dramatic. I am not familiar with that study. I will look into it. So I know there is a lot of research. You can just Google mindfulness for cancer survivors or cancer patients, cancer caregivers. There's a lot. Oh, Dawn already attends the Tuesday sessions. Yay. And you're coming for this as well. So Pam, music can be powerful, yes. Just playing one selection, eyes closed, breathing deeply. Even if tears occur, they are relaxing tears. So that's very beautiful, that I feel tears can be actually quite healing. And in our sessions, if someone's able to touch into sadness, oh, I got spotlighted. I like to view the gallery and see everyone. I don't like to see myself. If someone can touch into sadness, that helps all of us really just drop deeply into present moment. And it can actually open our hearts rather than closing us down. Are your weekly sessions open? No, the Tuesday 15-minute sessions are open to the public. Anyone can come. And I'll include that in the resources that I send Erin, and hopefully she can, yes, Erin?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, okay.
That's
And so
great.
it's just a Zoom link, and it's always the same Zoom link, Zoom meeting ID. There's no password or anything. And we'll
That's
continue.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. And also, I want to make sure it has been absolutely wonderful having you with us, Elise. And also, for participants that have an active passport, we are offering the 8-week session. So you can use your passport. And Gail, if you want to share a little bit more about how those can get signed up or what they need, we can share some details before we wrap up for the evening, because I think just having this experience with you, Elise, really like, okay, we might want to dive into this.
Thank you, Erin. And sorry, I forgot to leave time for that.
That's okay. Absolutely. So if you have an active passport and you'd like to use Squares for Elise's courses, I will repost the flyer in the chat in a second. But you can also reach out to mbsr@jefferson.edu to get more information, or to indicate, that's how you would indicate your interest in learning more about the courses. And just please let her know that you are a Unite for Her participant when you do that.
And Gail, can I just say, we offered, oh, maybe it's also a question. We offered the 8-week course 4 times a year. In general, it's like by seasons. So our winter season begins in January. And right now we have 3 classes. Sometimes they do get full. Right now there's space in all 3 of them. But if they do get full, we will certainly have another one in January at the latest. So.
Okay, that's great to know.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, well, thank you. This was wonderful. Any other questions for Elise before we wrap up for the evening? I think you're sending us all into the weekend and into the evening so relaxed, and just giving us some things to think about, and maybe motivating us to incorporate some mindfulness more into our day. I love that.
Thank you, Erin. And thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.